Well, it's a very warm welcome to Adrienne Cahalan, winner of the last Hobart race as the navigator. But a great story in sailing for you, Adrienne. Where did it and how did it all begin?
Well, it was. I wasn't the traditional parents take me down to the sailing club, although I did grow up in Lane Cove near the Lane Cove River. So I used to listen to some kids on the bus home from school from the sailing club and think, oh wow, this sounds like fun. And when we went on holidays, which was up at Smiths Lakes, there was a couple of families that had a laser, so I used to just muck around on that. But I think the first time I went sailing was when I visited my cousins in Papua New Guinea, and they took me on a catamaran out in the harbour. And that, catamaran for a first sail in beautiful sun and warm water. I mean, I just fell in love with it straight away.
And what age would you have been then?
I was 14 then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
but I enjoyed competitive sports. I loved sport at school and, played netball and tennis and things like that.
And so, okay, we had a catamaran in Papua New Guinea. From there, where did you go?
Well, then we were on the family holidays at Smiths Lake, and so I nagged this family. I used their laser all the time, and that's when I saved up. I used to waitress part-time and everything, and I saved up and bought a laser, and so that was in like year 11, and then went down to put it down at the club.
At Lane Cove?
At Lane Cove 12-foot skiff club.
So you're basically self-taught till then, were you? Really?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I've never really had coaching, unlike some of the the kids now. There's a lot, which is great, a lot of programs and things. But having said that, I mean, Lane Cove is a wonderful club, and so people just helped you anyway, and helped you. Someone, a good friend, Mark Walsh, actually, a great 12-foot skiff sailor, took me on the Lane Cove River and taught me what a lift and a knock was.
Right. Well, you've learnt well, that's for sure. So from the laser, where did you go?
So I after that, so I bought a windsurfer at the same time as well as in my first year after school. So I then really immersed myself because it was so much fun and entered every regatta I could. So
in windsurfing?
In windsurfing and in lasers. And I was only 50 kilos at the time, so I learnt very quickly that lasers probably weren't the right one. But they're such great boats to start to learn to sail in, because you can capsize, they're easy to right, and you can take another person with you as well. So I really enjoyed that part of it and enjoyed all the social side of the club, and would enter the New South Wales. I drove across to Perth and did the nationals in the laser, and then I was down in the club one evening just polishing the bottom, because that was a very social thing too. Everyone would go down and work on their boats. And one of the club members, Jack Winning, said, a 12-foot skiff would suit you. You're light and he said, mine's for sale. And so I bought. I made the change, and that was in 1986. So I was about 21 or so, 22, and I never looked back after that, because I realised that skiff sailing was really the thing for me.
And it's a tricky place to sail, that Lane Cove River. You certainly get your lifts and knocks from all different directions, don't you?
Well, you do. You see, there's a great, being a river rat, it teaches you boat handling, and in the skiffs, that's everything. So it's a great place, and then you've got humbug as well.
Yeah, humbug. We won't go there. But who sailed with you then in the 12-foot skiff?
Well, it just so happened that at that time there was a group of people that all sort of bought 12-foot skiffs at the same time, my age. So my first crew was Jim Walsh, and we had I think one of the really fun days is when you're down the back of the fleet and you've got nothing to lose and you're just kicking around. And so there was quite a group of us that, maybe 6 or 7 of us, that started to climb up the ranks at the same time. And we'd swap crews. So I did 3 seasons in 12-foot skiff, and the third season 3 or 4 seasons I did, and then the third season I built my own boat.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and so I got someone to build the hull, and I sort of project managed it, if you know what I mean, and that was with Michael Carter. Mm-hmm. He did all the sail program and everything, and our goal was the Inter-Dominions in 1988, and I was sponsored by Law Book Company then. So, and I think one of the highlights for me was I was down, in those days a lot of things were done in Manly Vale, in the different sheds down there, and one day I had my boat down there, and Ben Lexing came in and said, oh, that's a nice looking 12. And so, I sort of felt like, oh, this is one of the very exciting moment.
Yeah. And who designed the boat? Did you design?
No. I don't have expertise in yacht design. It was just, it would have been one of the moulds. They had moulds in those days, and I actually can't recall. But
did you contest the Inter-Dominion?
Yeah, we did.
Was that in Sydney or in Auckland?
It was in Auckland, actually. And for those that have ever sailed a 12-foot skiff in Auckland and it's windy, I mean, the 12-foot skiff really, sometimes it feels like you have to let the spinnaker go just to slow the thing down. And I remember going from the top of the harbour down to the bottom harbour in Auckland thinking, wow, I think we're going too fast.
Hey, we could stop.
Yeah, we could stop at the bottom. But we came sixth. I mean, we were close. We were third for a long time, and then we ended up sixth. But the next year, I'd been asked. One of the sponsors with Julian Bethwaite, who was putting all the B18s together, rang me up and said, "Were you interested to sail an 18?" And so I said yes straight away. And Andrew Cuddy and Michael Carter sailed my boat the next year, and they won the Inter-Dominion.
Right.
So I was really happy about that because it meant that it was a great boat. Yeah.
And so you stepped up into the 18s, and who sailed with you there?
Well, that was an interesting. So they were a new type of 18s. You know, they'd had all the two-handed. There was no rules. There was 30-foot wings, and this was part of the program to bring them back to a more affordable level, and the start of the Grand Prix circuit, which was a really fabulous time to be a part of. I mean, it was so exciting. You sailed, over 100 races in a short period of time. You were the fittest you ever were, and the racing was so intense. You know, you'd come into the bottom mark with lots of boats. Anyway, it's just hard to describe the excitement of it. But so my first crew was the Sheldrick brothers out of the 12s, and then mid-season we changed a little bit, and Julian Bethwaite and Mick O'Brien sailed with me at the second half of the season. So again, having the privilege to sail with those two experienced sailors, we got fourth in the nationals that year, and that, to me, again, this exciting sailing Moreton Bay, 25 knots and an 18-footer with Julian. I mean, it was a really bit of a baptism of fire, actually.
But just getting off the water onto shore, you were studying at this time for law? You studied law?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did my first year at uni in 1982, and I did arts law. So, I certainly didn't get the medal, that's for sure. But university is a great time for sport because, you can sort of, particularly doing law and everything, it wasn't like I had to be in a lab every day like you do in the sciences. You could adjust your study accordingly, and so I was able to fit that in with the law and did lots of universities. It's a great place, university.
Yeah. Well, within the skiffs, when and how did yachts come into your life?
Well, it all sort of happened at once because actually I was thinking about that because my oldest brother was doing a bit of sailing, and there was a man who lived down the road, John Shields, who had a small sort of like 30-footer down at Royal Prince Alfred. My brother used to go with him, and he took me one day and we did the offshore races off Pittwater. And then I just kept sailing with him on a Saturday. He'd pick me up out the front and we'd go down. And again, he was very detailed and meticulous. And so teaching you good habits early is really important because there are just certain things you don't do and you didn't ever do them in the rest of your life. But at the same time, I made friends with particularly the Parker family, who owned another concubine. And we used to do the overnight races in the Blue Water series. And they used to say to me, "Oh, well, you're good at reading, you can do the navigation." But I did really enjoy that side of it. And at TAFE, at uni, in the second year uni, I went and did small craft seamanship and meteorology and coastal navigation and ocean navigation at night time.
And that was a tech course?
Yeah, at UTS.
Right.
Yeah, and so I sort of immersed myself in it, and I love the navigation side of it.
Was that Celestial or?
Yeah, and Celestial.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Celestial is very hard. The people who do that well are really clever, and mathematical. That wasn't my strong point, math.
But did you see that as a way into?
No, not at all.
Yachting by becoming a navigator as such at that time?
No, because I just liked it. I've always loved Captain Cook. I remember the bicentennial. I remember 1970 very well when I was a child. You know, I just used to love all the marine books and things. And navigation, I mean, I was a helmsman then more really in the skiffs, so actually that's more what I was doing. It was just that they just said to me, the crew, can you look after this? And I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to. And my teacher, navigation teacher, Norman Wood, I kept in touch with him right up until he died, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, and he actually left me all his sextants and things. Wow. So I've got some incredible equipment. Radio direction finders. Yeah. He left me this big box and I went and picked it up and there was all this incredible equipment.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when did you do your first Hobart?
So I did my first Hobart in 1984.
On what boat?
On Mystic 7.
Oh, the Swanson 36.
Swanson 36.
Gigi.
Yeah.
Neville Gigi.
Neville Gigi, yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, gosh, you've got a good memory.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I started, because of with the friends from uni, and I, you know, as you do, you come down to this club and just, you know, the world's just wide-eyed and all these people and, you know, looking at all these people walking the docks who you've only ever heard about, you know. And so I was sailing on a Sunday and I started to sail, I was, believe it or not, I was working at the Middle Harbour 18-foot Skiff Club behind the bar, and the doorman there, Bruce Perry, said, oh, you know, why don't you come with us on a Sunday? And that was with Norman Ridge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on magazine. And so then we did, my first offshore race was the Sydney Lord Howe Island.
Right, on magazine?
On magazine, yeah, right. So Norman Ridge, who took me, and obviously wonderful person to sail with and in very safe hands there. So, and then, you know, after I got the taste after Lord Howe.
You weren't navigator?
No, I was just a general crew. And then I went, oh, well, next step, Hobart. And I didn't have a ride, but I'd met Neville Gigi and his crew over there in Lord Howe. Right. And I thought, oh, well, you know, there's no reason I can't look for a ride for the Hobart. And I remember one particular person at the bar I had mentioned, and they said, oh, you'll never get a ride. You'll never get a ride. You haven't, you know, done. And I went, oh, well, you know, you don't worry about that. And then a week before, Neville Gigi, one of the crew for Neville Gigi rang me and said, you know, one person's pulled out. So a week before the Hobart, there I was, ready to go in my Line 7 wet weather gear.
Exactly, as we all did. And what was the race like? What did you?
Well, that was one of the roughest on record.
Which year was it?
1984.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
that was rough. So it took us
then.
about 4 days to get to Eden. And then we finished on New Year's Day. So, but, you know, like the boat down below was warm. It was Neville Gigi and his wife Val, and Val navigated, and they'd done 8 or 10 Hobarts already. There was only 6 of us. It was a small boat, and yeah,
they're good boats, those Swanson 36s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seaworthy boats.
Yeah, so that was, you know, and obviously being with Neville and Val, you know, they were, everything was dry below, very strict rules, got to take all your gear off, and so it was a very good environment, you know.
And a good learning curve.
Very good, sure. Yeah. So I remember we pulled into Eden and fixed the main, so yeah.
Well then, where do we go from there?
Well, after that, so 1984, that was sort of the 12-footers, and then I went into the 18. So I really was focusing on dinghy sailing. So I actually didn't do another Hobart race till 1990. Wow. And I didn't navigate. That was on group therapy. I did that on 1990 and 1991. Right. Because in those days, a lot of the 12 nationals, well, the Interdominions and also the 18s were in those weeks just after Christmas. So I wasn't able to do both. And also it coincided a little bit with the sailing, the law studies and things. Right. So, but I did continue to do all those races like the Malula Bar and those fabulous races, you know, to Bird Island and Flinders. And so 1991, and then 92, I skippered my own boat to Hobart. That was the Bache beyond Thunderdome.
Yes.
But then we had a group of about... actually, one of the really fun things that happened, you know, when you're young, was on Windward Passage, they got a group of girls together to do the race to Newcastle, and they had the men's boat and then they had the women's boat. And so, you know, I was on board with people like Alex Murray, Nicola Beckwith, you know, all these people who you really looked up to, Vanessa, and that was an incredible opportunity. So by now you had quite a big group of girls that were all sailing in different respects, and we sort of said, well, why not put a crew together? And I had the backing of my sponsor, John Hallis in Bache, and we put that together. And when
well, he sponsored the 18 as well for you,
did.
didn't he? That's
Yeah,
right,
yeah. So that was good. So we did that in '92. So I skippered, and you know,
so that was the one tonner, was it? That
Yeah,
belonged to Warren Johns. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah,
yeah.
And was that an all-girl crew?
That was an all-girl crew.
Right.
Yeah, and we still all keep in touch. And we, as a skipper, I mean, you know, I didn't have any idea of what is required. I mean, I did, but you know, it's a tough job being a skipper, and it's actually not a job I really enjoy very much. You know, I do prefer being the navigator.
And who navigated that year for you?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
You
I did
both
both jobs.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and it was pretty rough. I remember sort of being down below, and but we had a lot of experience. We had Kathy Johnson from Bullfrog, Vanessa Dudley, Amanda Wilmot. We had a lot of good people. Right. So we got the boat there, but we ripped our main, so we weren't in as good
Were you
a place.
practicing celestial then, navigation on the boat, or were we pushing buttons?
No, we weren't pushing buttons then. GPS had sort of only just come in really in the early 90s, so I don't recall pulling out a sextant, but you know, I think it was a bit more straightforward. We could do it on DR, but certainly in 1984, Neville had the sextant out, I remember. And then the GPS came in, because in those early days of doing all those races, Flinders Bird and everything, you were doing the lighthouse.
Yes.
You know, looking with the flashes and the you know, running fixes. I don't really miss that.
No, exactly.
Certainly the stress, because I do recall before that 92 race, I'm thinking, wow, okay, I've got to do this now. I've got to navigate, because that was my first race navigating.
Right, and then after that, you said...
So 92, then after that, I started to look further afield, and I saw they were putting together a team for the Whitbread.
Yes.
And I applied to that, which was US Women's Challenge. So that was in 92, 93. Yes. So I was sailing the 18s, and then I said to John, you know, I really want to go and try out for this team. And he gave me the blessing, you know, with the 18-footer. And I went and tried out in Annapolis, not going as a navigator, going as a helmsman, and then they ended up knowing that I had some experience in navigating, so they put me into that role. But it was interesting because I stayed then for the transatlantic, which was one of the lead-up races to the Whitbread, and I'd never navigated Great Circle before.
Right.
So I actually rang my navigation teacher, Norman Wood, and I said, okay,
what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah. But by then we had GPS and everything. So
it was a steep learning curve, really, when you're jumping on a boat to do the transatlantic and Whitbread.
But that's just what you did.
Yeah.
You know, you just sort of put your hand up and said, I can do this.
But did you go all the way on that women's challenge?
Yeah. Yes, I did. So that was in the winter of 93. And then I stayed with them and did the whole round the world race. It changed to Heineken after the first leg because there were some issues with ownership and also with money. They really didn't have enough money to finish the race.
Where did that race start? Did that start in England?
That started in England.
And then
it went to Punta del Este.
Oh, first.
Yes. And so that was about, in those days, that was 25 to 30 days at sea.
Yeah.
And then we went then from Punta del Este right through to Fremantle. That was quite a long leg.
Long leg.
Yeah. And then we'd switched over skippers then. Heineken had come in and Dawn Riley had come in as skipper, and there was a small change of crew in addition to sort of the key players that were already there. And then we did, and that was then from Fremantle to Auckland to Punta del Este, Miami, home. Yeah.
And how did you find that navigation? Was it?
Oh, the navigation was fantastic.
Was it?
Yeah, I mean, on the other boats there was, for example, Mike Quilter, Andrew Cape, you know, and again, helpful. You could ask some questions. It was really good. When you do those long races and you're part of that team for a long time, you learn a lot of skills on the electronic front, all the B&G, you know, how to replace things at sea, fix things at sea, you know, you start reading the manuals. And so that was the base of very important skill set for me. And also, you had weather faxes then,
Yeah.
so you'd wait for the paper to come out of the machine. And we did all our skeds by HF radio. So that was a really important time to develop those key offshore skills of being self-sufficient. Because, when you are out there in these ocean racing yachts, as you know, you're your own little world. You're making your own water. You've only got what you've got. You're not fishing or anything like that, And so you do have to be incredibly self-sufficient, particularly because in those days, no internet, or no satellite communication. You really were on your own out there. So
in that race, correct me if I'm wrong, there was no ice limits then. You could go as far south as you wanted.
That's right.
Yeah.
You could, and we saw a lot of ice. You see a lot of ice quite high in the Indian Ocean. You normally see that about 49, 50, although I haven't updated that for climate change because it might be a little less. Yeah. But we did have to go up around Prince Edward Island, and that kept us a little bit higher. Right. But as it happens, you don't want to go too far south anyway, because you will get to the ice pack, and you don't want to go on the wrong side of the low pressure systems, and they
you need
generally
some leverage.
So they generally sit, let's say, in the Indian about the centre about 50 south. So you don't want to be that low, but when you get the Pacific, the ice pack's lower, and the lows track lower because they track lower to get around Cape Horn, which is a different latitude to Cape of Good Hope. Yeah. So again, there's a real skill navigating into the Horn because of where the orientation of the low pressures are. Yeah. And
what was that race like? Cold and miserable, or enjoyable, or a bit of everything, I guess, was it?
Because it was a huge adventure, so it was hard though, like dealing with personalities on board, I was Australian. I learned a lot about, because I was 29 and I'd done a lot of sailing here, and I learned a lot about having a bit more understanding of other cultures, that people do think differently, not just my way or our way, and Australians, we're quite, we do like to just say it how it is. We're quite candid, and when you've got other nationalities, like you're dealing with British, American, so I did find it quite hard. And in fact, I remember in Auckland, I thought, I'm not sure whether I can keep going, just because of different things that were going on board. And but someone said to me, no one will remember if you didn't finish it, and you'll and that was really good advice actually, and we kept going. Yeah.
Did you see Cape Horn, or was it?
Yes, we did. Did you? Yes, I've been around a couple of times, and it looks a lot like the bottom of Tasmania. Yeah. It does feel like it, and in fact, when I did the Bruny Island race a couple of years ago, I thought, wow, it's incredible, just this windswept landscape.
So people could go down there and take a photo of Bruny Island, so I've been around Cape Horn.
Well, they kind of have almost, as well, in the bottom four capes, the traditional round-the-world bottom four capes, Cape Horn, then Southeast Cape, Tassie, New Zealand, and then Cape Horn,